and welcome back to the Mogul Performance Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. It's something that not a lot of leaders or individuals talk enough about, and it's something that's actually really important to help us sharpen our skills. And what we're talking about, we are talking about hobbies, and more specifically, why stepping outside of your craft, so doing something like a hobby that is completely outside of your field of work, your industry, whatever that is, can make you significantly stronger on the inside. And this topic was actually this came back to a memory for me when I was going through a various leadership classes throughout my master's and also my doctorate program. And one of the articles, the scholarly articles that I read, talked about how leaders who have hobbies that are outside their craft actually help them enhance specific areas that they may not be very fluent on or good at, right? And I'll go into more detail about that here in a little bit. I wrote a blog about this. It's called The Power of Hobbies, Why Stepping Out of Your Craft Makes You Stronger Inside of It. And I just want to expand on it here, right? So people can listen to this and then really get more in depth behind the idea, especially for leaders, high performers, and for anyone who's trying to push themselves harder in their careers or just in their life. Now, before we get started, I want to go into a little bit of a promotion. So Mogul Performance is a leadership and executive coaching organization. We help leaders boost their skills, create awareness, emotional intelligence, executive presence, you name it. We help them in those specific skills and those specific areas. So if you are a leader, or if you know of a leader, maybe someone who's a new leader, a mid-level manager, an executive who's just looking to take that next step to become better at being a leader, or just unsure of where to go in the next step, reach out to us. You can find us on mogulperformance.com. We also have Mogul Performance on LinkedIn. We also have it on Instagram, and we also have it on Facebook. And you can also email us at iammogul, all one word, at gmail.com. All right. Also, we got some swag, right? So you can see I now have a hat. So all Mogul clients that book with us, you get a hat, you get a shirt, you name it. That's something that comes with a part of our package. So now with that aside, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So our culture, especially in America, is focused around the grind, right? So if you're not actually doing your craft, you're not actually doing your work, then you're falling behind. That's kind of the culture of what it is here in America. We just live in a world where we worship productivity. Wake up early, work late, fill every single minute of your day with something, hustle harder. That eventually is going to lead to some sort of burnout, right? We need something that can help us pull away from that just daily grind. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be working hard. You should be working hard, but there needs to be some sort of, I don't want to use the word balance, but effectiveness in your life. So whether we want to say it out loud or not, a lot of people believe that time spent away from work, it's wasted. It's wasted time. But when you actually study the lives of high performers, which I'm going to name some here later, the people who are the most consistent, the most effective, the most innovative, right? I want to highlight that word here. You start to notice something that is actually really interesting. They intentionally make space in their life for things that have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with their job. So Warren Buffett plays the ukulele. Simone Biles, although she is a gymnastist, she's also a dancer as well. And then Steve Wozniak, he tinkered with gadgets just for fun. Now, none of those pursuits were about being productive directly. They weren't career moves by any means. They were hobbies. And those hobbies helped shape the way that they performed and innovated. And hobbies sharpen the person that is behind the profession, the craft that they're doing. And that's the point that so many people miss. So I want to go into a personal example. So many of you know me professionally, right? You know that I am a leadership and organizational development expert. Some of you may know that just a hobby of mine is fitness, exercise, right? That's not, if you know me, you know that's not something that is new. But what a lot of people don't know is that I actually brew, and I brew beer, right? It's a random, very random hobby that I got into. So how this started was, luckily, thanks to the military, had a bunch of VA benefits that were left over, and I saw, I could use some up, and St. Louis University had a brewing program. So I enrolled in the program, used my VA benefits of what I had left over, and just started something completely different. Just was seeing what else was out there, right? I wanted to do something that was kind of more fun. Even though I'm very passionate about this, I wanted something a little more fun, something more enjoyable, um, just to do on my own time. So after years of studying leadership, years of studying psychology, all my coaching that I do, organizational development, all that stuff, I was just ready to learn something that was just outside of that space. So after enrolling in that program, I dedicated a full year on brewing science and operations. So that it started from just how to make beer at your own house, all the way through how to create a actual business plan to open up a brewery, right? And it changed a lot for me, more than what I thought. There was a lot of just uh, self realization, understanding different areas and different things that I was weak in, different things I didn't want to pursue. You know, for me, I am a driver. I like to move at a very fast pace, and that undercuts my ability sometimes. But brewing, when you brew, the process is slow and it needs to be meticulous. It needs to be very precise, and it's also very unforgiving. The best way I can explain brewing is it's like baking, right? If you ever try to bake, muffins, a cake, cupcakes, anything, you know that you can't just add a little bit of extra, you can't just eyeball baking soda, baking powder, flour, sugar, butter. You can't just throw butter in cold in some recipes, right? Brewing is the same way. It's very unforgiving and there are no shortcuts. So, a part of the process, yeast makes beer, right? Yeast eats it, just like how if those who are sourdough fanatics out there, yeast eats sugar. So, yeast makes beer, but it takes time, and that's called fermentation. And you can't rush fermentation. It takes 2 weeks. That's the standard. It takes 2 weeks. You can't do it 1 week. If you wait 1 week, it's not going to taste very good. And the 2 week mark is very specific. You can't guess your ratios, right? So when you're putting in grains, you're putting in different hops, and trust me, I've tried to eyeball these things and I've screwed some things up, right? Put way too many hops in a batch before, and that thing was hard to drink. And most importantly, you cannot just adjust the temperature, just like baking, right? If you want to bake a cake faster, you don't crank up the oven. What happens? You get a burnt cake. Well, you can't, if you want to make beer faster, you can't just crank up the temperature because the yeast gets stressed and then it ruins the beer. So this hobby that I was embarking on, it forced me to slow down. It forced me to start paying attention to the little things, the micro details, and respect every step that is a part of the process. Again, I am a driver. I want to sprint towards whatever the objective is, whatever the mission is. I want to sprint toward that thing. But everything that happens in the middle, it can be a blur. But with brewing, it's not. There's a very meticulous step and process behind it. So it helped me be stronger in that area. So it also humbled me in some ways. So when I'm brewing, I'm not Dr. Evan. I'm not a coach or an organizational psychologist or the expert that's in the room. I'm just a beginner. I'm starting fresh, right? Trial and error. There's things that I've screwed up. But learning something with my hands, just starting fresh again, not being a professional anymore, can be a very humbling experience. Making those mistakes and then resetting, trial and error, then trying again. And then the more that I started to brew, right? I've been doing this for about 3 years now. The more that I brew, the more that I realize how deeply the lessons that I learn, and as silly as it sounds, in brewing, making beer, come back to leadership. So what are those lessons? Well, growth happens slowly. You can't force growth, right? It takes time. It takes repetition. Progress isn't always going to be visible. Sometimes you're just not going to see it. Time, it matters. Things need to mature. Tactical patience is something that I always talk about, right? When things just don't seem like they're going your way, sometimes you just need to pause and you need to wait. As hard as it sounds, having that patience and being able to wait can be one of the most effective things towards growth. Letting things settle in. Also, there are small steps that you take, right? We have the elephant right here. What's the analogy? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Small steps. And then you also have to create the conditions, the environment for things to develop. Things aren't just going to happen out of nowhere. You need to create the environment where execution does happen and has the ability to happen. So whether it's yeast or it's people, the environment matters more than the pressure that you put on yourself. And brewing gave me that reset that I didn't even know that I needed. So let's talk about why stepping away from your craft. Why does this make you better? And we're going to dive into science a little bit. So research shows that people who regularly engage in hobbies outside of work perform better in their job. They are more creative. They are more adaptable. They are more resilient. They are more focused. A study from the University of San Francisco found that employees who pursued hobbies regularly performed up to 30% better in their professional roles. So if you are a leader, what's something that you could do? Encourage your team. Encourage them to take on hobbies. Try something new. Dive into it, right? If they're talking about maybe getting into playing volleyball, let them get into that. If they're talking about knitting, maybe glass blowing, anything. It can directly impact their ability in their work. So why? Because hobbies strengthen something called cognitive flexibility, your ability to shift from perspective, problem solve, and then adapt. So when you only live in one mental mode and you're just focused on your craft and that's all you're doing, your work mode, your brain gets stiff. You're not nimble, right? It narrows. It starts solving everything in the same way. Think of groupthink, right? But just to yourself, right? That's not what we want to have. We want to have different perspective on different things. Hobbies interrupt that pattern of just narrow focus. They wake up the part of the brain that works quietly in the background. And when you return to your job, those areas help you think more clearly and also creatively. And also, when you're stepping away and you're towards your hobby, right? You're able to recharge. You're doing something that you enjoy. So you're able to recharge and fill your cup back up. your hobby becomes a performance enhancer without you even realizing that's actually what it is. Now, leaders, I'm sure you're going to say this, business owners, I don't have time for a hobby. I'm too busy. I'm too busy for a hobby. I can't do it. Well, you're too busy not to have one, just to be frank. When you lead people, when you hold responsibilities, when you make decisions, and you carry the weight of outcomes for your team, for your business, for your organization, your mental energy can only go so far, and it will drain, and it will drain fast if you cannot refill that cup. So if you don't have that outlet, you will burn out without noticing. Your motivation at work may just feel harder to get simple tasks done. Sometimes those simple tasks can make you feel tired. Sometimes waking up can feel a lot harder than what it used to. Those are specific signs of burnout. And if that sounds like you, this might be something you want to try. Your creativity can drop. Your patience can drop. Your clarity, just sitting in on meetings and trying to provide input or solutions, can be a lot more challenging. And your emotional bandwidth starts to shrink. Now, not only does that affect your team, but what happens for those of you who are going home to your family? How is that affecting you? How is that affecting your children? How is that going to work over an extended period of time, over months and years, when you're drained all the time? And then you're suddenly showing up as a worse version of yourself without even understanding why. Like you're like, oh, I used to be this person. I used to be this hard charger. I used to be able to do these things and execute. But now it's just so much harder to do that. Hobbies, they give you that distance that you need from your craft. Although you may love it. I love what I do. I really do. But I also can only take on talking about leadership, coaching leadership so much. I need that ability to step away. Hobbies, they create that space and they remind you that you are more than just a title, especially when you're trying something new and you're starting over. Talk to anybody who starts in jiu-jitsu, right? You get humbled very, very quickly. When you disconnect from that performance mode in your brain, you return sharper, you return calmer, and you return more intentional. So leaders need hobbies because leadership takes everything from you if you are not careful. Okay, I want to repeat that. Leadership can take everything from you if you are not careful. So, how do you find the right hobby, right? So you might be thinking, okay, maybe I should do a hobby. I don't know where to start. What should I do? Well, you start looking at what your life and maybe your leadership is lacking right now. If your job requires constant decision making, some something you can choose is where you want to just follow, right? Be a follower again instead of being a leader. Cooking classes, step by step, gardening, woodworking, brewing. If your job is rigid and structured, choose something that is creative. Okay? Push yourself. Squeeze your brain a little bit. Painting, photography, music, podcasting, editing. If you're on the screen all day, choose something that's a little more tactile. Building, crafting something, restoring something, making something new again. If you're mentally exhausted, choose something physical. Running, yoga, hiking, weightlifting, canoeing, kayaking, walking the dog, rucking, you name it. If you never slow down at your work, choose something that's meditative. Reading, maybe fishing, maybe journaling, maybe bird watching, right? Maybe going on a walk. Your hobbies, at the end of the day, they should balance you out. They shouldn't mirror who you are in your day to day. They should create that balance in your life. That effect, not even, again, pulling away from the word balance, that effectiveness. I want to use the word effectiveness, right? Hobbies create effectiveness in your life. And here's the really important part that I want to address. Your hobbies or your hobby does not need to be something that is productive. Okay, so my high performers, again, your hobby does not need to be something that is productive. Brewing is not productive. Making beer after work on the weekends, having it, that's not productive, right? But it needs to be you, and it needs to be yours. It needs to be your hobby, something that you chose, not something else that was forced on you. And maybe even reflect back. What was something that you enjoyed as a child, right? I recently I bought a bike. Haven't had a bike in over 15 years. And that thing brings me back. Just riding a bike and just pedaling around brings me back to that almost that childhood state, just having fun, enjoying the air, right? It's that reset. So hobbies, they build leadership qualities in most ways that a lot of people overlook. So what are those? Well, they teach patience because you can't rush development. They teach presence because you have to focus on what's right in front of you. Humility because you are becoming a beginner all over again, trying something new. Creativity because you solve problems from new angles that you never really thought about or you have to kind of challenge yourself to do. Discipline because there's a process behind a hobby no matter what. There's a process you have to show up and do it. Then resilience because mistakes are going to happen and you need to learn from those mistakes and you need to pay attention to how you react to those mistakes. Your hobby starts becoming your own little personal teacher and it sharpens the exact qualities that you need to lead well. So here's what I want you to think about. Again, think back maybe even, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. What used to bring you joy? Or what hobbies do currently bring you joy? What's something that you've done new that brings you joy? What hobbies force you to slow down and be present in the moment, not thinking about what's next all the time? What hobby wakes up a different part of you? What hobby reminds you what it's like to be a learner again? Make time for that. Even if it's once a week, even if it's once a month, right? I probably brew once a quarter, right? It will make you sharper as a leader. It'll make you a calmer person and also a more grounded human being. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to justify it. You just need to show up for it. So that's all we have today for the Mogul Performance Podcast. I want to thank you for joining. If you want to learn more, you can actually check out the full blog on the Mogul Performance website. Also, we have our various resources on there. We have free resources on our website at mogulperformance.com. You can download a little pop-up should show up on there. All you got to do is put your email in there and you can get some free leadership toolkits. They're absolutely amazing. We have multiple that are on there. And then if you're interested in the services that we provide, again, building leaders, new supervisors, emerging leaders, mid-level managers, directors, senior directors, vice presidents, executives, you name it, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do. So you want to learn more about it, check out our Mogul Performance website. It's all on there. So other than that, until next time, don't forget, be a mogul.